You are working at home or in the office?
Oh, I am very much at home.
At home, very good, very good.
Yes.
Sir, we are live now.
Okay.
Okay.
Deepa, let's start.
Good morning, everyone. I am Rita Sharma, Associate Fellow TERI and Coordinator of this webinar. And it's my privilege to welcome you all in today's webinar on Seeing Through Misinformation, Combating the Fake News Online. TERI is hosting this webinar in collaboration with Unesco. As we all know that Indian government has taken few initiatives and measures in recent times to fight against the menace of fake news. TERI, being a reputed research organization, is concerned about the impact of fake news on future research and society. In India, we have very less awareness about the multidimensional damage that fake news can cause, and hence require massive awareness building exercise. The fake news can also have major impact because information shapes our views about the world. We make important decisions on the basis of the information which we retrieve through the internet or through various digital platforms. And the spreading of misinformation through various mediums can cause confusion and unnecessary stress among the public. So TERI with UNESCO has tailored this webinar to provide timely example and activities to create awareness among civil society, especially research communities, against the misinformation and fake news and prepare them for combating fake news online. Besides that, TERI has decided to develop a policy brief on the issue of fake news based on the available resources and the views evolving through these webinars. And last month, we have also organized one webinar with IFLA, International Federation of Libraries Association on fake news. And information literacy also received an overwhelming response all over the world. And now in collaboration with UNESCO, we are coming up with a series of webinars on various pertinent issues in these areas, which requires a rigorous discussion. So today's webinar is first in this series, and we have a strong panel of experts with us to elaborate on the topic. And on behalf of TERI, I welcome you all the speakers. Mr. Delamni Hezekiel, advisor from UNESCO, Dr. Rajnikant Srivastava, Director ICMR, Dr. Kanika Seth, cyber law expert and advocate, Supreme Court of India, Ms. Survi Malik, Program Director, India Internews, and moderator of today's webinar is Mr. Delamni Hezekiel from UNESCO. But before introducing him formally, I would like to make few announcements. So please post your questions in question answer box. We will take only those questions which will be posted in question answer box. There will be 4 opinion poll questions which will be posted during the webinar. Please be alert and vote your opinion. Only 2 questions will be taken after each presentation. Remaining questions we will take at the end of the webinar. This webinar is also streamed live on TERI YouTube channel, and recording will also be available there. So now I will post our first opinion poll questions. So we will start this webinar with the opinion poll questions. So I request all of you, please see your screen. I request all the speakers, please also participate in this opinion poll question. So now the question is reflecting on your screen. Do you pay to subscribe to any digital news resources? Yes or no? Just click on any of the option. the responses. Now I introduce the moderator of this webinar, Mr. Ezekiel Delamini. Mr. Ezekiel Delamini is the advisor for communication and information for South Asia at the UNESCO New Delhi office. He holds a Master of International Business Administration, MIBA from the United States International University, and other postgraduate diplomas. Before joining UNESCO New Delhi, he worked with UNESCO in Paris, Nairobi, Accra, and Harare, and has more than 30 years of experience in supporting communication and information policies and practices in developing countries, especially Africa. So with this, I request Dr. Delamini to please take further the proceeding of this webinar. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Rita. A very good day, very good morning to all of you, and welcome to this webinar session on seeing through misinformation, combating fake news online. It's a pleasure for me to be with you this morning, and we've got also eminent panelists that are joining us this morning. We've got Dr. Rajni Kant, who is the current director at Icmr, that is the Indian Council of Medical Research, and particularly at the Regional Medical Research Center at Gorakhpur. And he also heads research management, policy, planning, and biomedical communication at the same institute. He has vast experience of more than 36 years in the area of biomedical research. He does research in public health, strategic planning, policy formulation with primary interest in malaria control strategies and vector bionomics, particularly the community-based bioenvironmental control of malaria. He is widely published. He is involved with a number of projects, including projects that are addressing the current pandemic of COVID-19. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Rajni.
Thank you so
We
much.
also have Dr. Kanika Seth. Dr. Kanika Seth is a legal expert. She is an internationally renowned cyber law, IP, and media law expert practicing in the Supreme Court of India. She's an accomplished author, policymaker, and a trainer in the National Judiciary and Police Academies in India. She's also a managing partner of Seth Associates, an established law firm based in New Delhi, and renders legal services to both domestic and global clients. She is also an international expert, having worked with the UN, worked with the government of India in various departments, widely published. And again, please join me in welcoming Dr. Seth. Lastly, but not least, we've got Ms. Surabhi Malik. Surabhi is the program India at Internews. She's a journalist and a media expert, an international non-profit that empowers people worldwide with trustworthy, high-quality news, that is internews, and information that needs to make informed decisions. For more than 35 years, in more than 100 countries, Internews has worked to build healthy media and information environments where they are most needed. She is, like I said, a journalist and a media trainer and a media expert, a fact-checking expert at Internews. And in 2018, she launched and led the biggest network of fact-checking trainers in India. She's also a fellow with Google News Lab, and where she served between 2016 and 2018, and trained many newsrooms and journalists in person or online, or rather, on in-person or online verification, digital safety, data journalism. She has worked for NDTV and has also worked for the Times of India. Also requesting you to join me in welcoming Ms. Malik. And to kickstart this conversation this morning, I will request Dr. Rajni to please give us or share with us his thoughts on dealing with infodemic in the time of the pandemic, giving some perspectives from ICMR. Over to you, Dr. Rajni.
Thank you so much, Dalmani, for brief introduction. Thanks to Dr. Ganguly for organizing this webinar. And thanks for Dr. Kanika, Dr. Sulbhi, Dr. Rita for sharing this important event. So I am going to speak on dealing with the infodemic in the time of pandemic. So is it visible to all?
Yep.
Okay. Perfect.
Yes, Dr. Rajni.
Yes, you
Okay,
can hear.
perfect. So since I am working in the ICMR, and ICMR, you might be aware, is on the forefront in the fight against the COVID-19. So that is the purpose of having this talk, how we can deal with the infodemic, because a lot of information is available online, offline, related with the COVID-19. And each and every expert, each and every person in the country has become a COVID expert now. You get a lot of information in newspapers, on online, and on WhatsApp group. So that is the reason that we have decided to plan this webinar, how we can deal with the fake news which is appearing mostly in the online platforms. So about the ICMR, because many of the audience, they might not be aware what is ICMR. So ICMR, you might be aware, is one of the oldest research body in the country. It was set up in 1911. So more than 100 years we have covered, and it is dedicated to do and conduct research, coordinate research, implement medical research for the benefit of the society, and how we can translate the research output and the medical innovation in the society, and how we can support the national program. So we have a broad network of 26 national institutes working in different disease-specific areas, for example, malaria, tuberculosis, cholera, leprosy, whatever you call. We have now 106 viral diagnostic laboratories across the country, 79 multidisciplinary research units in the medical college to promote the medical research in the country, as well as the 18 model rural health research unit under the Department of Health Research, how the research happening in the laboratory can be translated into the fields. So that is the purpose of ICMR, how we are working with coordination with the state government, with the national program, so that can ultimately help in the benefit of the society and eliminating different disease. If you look back the 108 years, the journey of the ICMR, so we have been doing a lot of research. Then milestone discoveries, if you look into, we have been able to find out the solution for the tuberculosis, the home-based treatment for the tuberculosis. And then we also work in the area of polio elimination and the polio vaccine trials. Then we did work in the area of protein-energy malnutrition, then the introduction of the oral rehydration drug for the cholera. And we also did work in the area of the first scientific test tube baby. So these are the major milestone discoveries. We did work in the area of beriberi inquiry, in the area of malaria, set up the Malaria Survey of India, Kalajara also. And recently, we have been working in the area of H1N1 and investigating the outbreak of Nipah, which happens sometimes a year or 2 years back. Then also work in the area of Zika, KFD. And we are also supporting many other diseases like malaria, lymphatic filariasis, leprosy, and non-communicable disease like the cardiovascular disease, diabetes, hypertension. So we are working in major health problems now when we have the COVID-19. COVID-19 is a new phenomenon because before December, we never knew about what is COVID-19. So this is an unprecedented crisis and it's a global pandemic. So how it started? It's a novel coronavirus, and we call it a severe acute respiratory syndrome, SARS-CoV-2, and WHO named it a COVID-19. The first, it was reported in China, in the Wuhan. There were some cases of pneumonia. It happened in the month of December. And in January, the first case reported in Thailand. Then evidence of human-to-human transmission was established in January, and COVID-19 testing started in ICMR and IV Pune. That was the first laboratory which started testing of COVID-19, and WHO declared the public health emergency of international concern in January only, 30th January. And the first case in India was detected in January. And WHO declared it a pandemic because a lot of international travel was happening, and it started from the China to the other part of the country. And now we have more than 213 countries, they are infected with the COVID-19. India was proactive to deal with the COVID-19 and started the travel advisory. Then lockdown was started in different phases. First lockdown in March 24, then second lockdown in April, third lockdown in May, then the fourth lockdown. So now we have come into the unlock period. So during this whole epidemic scenario, what was happening, lot of information was being generated from the institute, from the laboratories. Media was also proactive. Media was capturing some information and putting on different print media, online media. So that was the major concern. And ICMR was on the forefront. We did a lot of work in the area of COVID-19. Guidelines were developed. Then we formulated the diagnostic RT-PCR. And when we started the testing, from one lab to now, we have more than 1,300 labs in the country, those who are involved for the COVID-19 testing. Testing was very low in the month of February. You see only 1,000 tests. Now we are doing more than 6 lakh tests per day. And India has tested more than 2 crore tests now. So this all was happening with the ICMR, in the network of ICMR. And ICMR was supporting the other institute of the CSIR, DST, DBT, Medical College, Health Government, state health programs. That is how the COVID-19 was being tackled by the ICMR. But now, while we were working in the area of COVID-19, tackling with the COVID-19, so there was a lot of information, how the information is to be transmitted so that the people and the society could get the correct information. Simultaneously, there was a fake news, misinformation was also being transmitted. So how we can understand what is the information, what is the fake information? So there are different kind of fake news, that is a misinformation, erroneous or incorrect information. Misinformation may not always be deliberate because you are not aware whether the information is correct or not, but unknowingly you are transmitting the information. So for example, ginger and turmeric being touted as a cure for COVID-19. So nobody knew it, whether this is correct or not. Again, disinformation. Disinformation means deliberately you are spreading the false information. For example, local doctors claiming finding a cure for COVID-19 to sell their medicines. So this was a disinformation. Then there is a problem of propaganda. Propaganda means the information, ideas, or rumors deliberately spread widely to help or harm a person or a group, a movement, institution, nations. For example, news originating on a specific community being held responsible for COVID-19 spreading India. So these are a different kind of fake news which was happening around the world. So is this a new phenomenon? Misinformation or fake news is a new phenomenon? No. Fake news has always existed in the public health and in the related field. For example, vaccine hesitancy has also been a key issue in delivery of public health intervention. India has, however, been able to overcome these problems. So there was a news that coronavirus vaccine ready, able to cure patient within 3 hours. So this was a fake news. So these kind of news, they were happening. So when it was a COVID-19, so a lot of information happening around the world. For example, in April, February 2022, WHO reported infodemic because a lot of information was coming across the world surrounding the coronavirus that makes it difficult for people to find a reliable guidance and take appropriate measures without resorting to panic and falling into complacency. So people should not fall to prey and they should not get panic. How they can get the correct information? Infodemic like pandemic is unprecedented due to increase in the penetration of digital media because we all know we have social media like Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp. So whatever information is spreading, it is spread very fast. So efforts are being made by the government and the multilateral agencies how we can counter the pandemic and how we can counter the infodemic. So what kind of information, what were the stages? First wave was information about the origin of the virus. Stories debunked were related to origin of the virus and people called it that it has originated from the bat infestation, transmission through pigs, how China is killing pigs, focusing on animals. Theory shifted to information around how food items like eating Chinese origin oranges may infect a person with COVID-19. One of the prominent viral but fake campaign was about the virus being created in a lab, genetic engineered most viruses there, funded by Bill Gates Foundation. So these were the first misinformation which was happening when there was the origin of the virus. Then second wave, old images, old videos were circulated creating fear. Second wave of information was flooded with a lot of old videos and photographs of people falling ill. China killing people to contain the virus. how Dettol and wheat can help to kill the virus, how certain races or religions are getting infected. So this is how the misinformation was happening. And in India also, first case of suicide due to fear of coronavirus, there was a major decline in consumption of poultry product because people thought that eating a non-vegetarian food may cause you a COVID-19. After being poisoned by bootleg alcohol in early March, victim had reportedly consumed ethanol. So these were different kind of information which was happening around the globe. Then there was the third wave of cure. These messages and videos were widely circulated and garnered maximum shares and like according to stories fact checked during the time period. Social media, including Twitter, Facebook, and WhatsApp, are hotbeds of such information. Then fourth wave was when India started the lockdown. Fake news about the extension of the lockdown was spread before the official announcement of every lockdown. And this led to panic buying, hoarding of household products, food supplies. So message and social media posts being circulated these days are creating information to government offices, policy papers, institutions like WHO to gain credibility while continuing to miss people in one way or the other. So these are the information like cure highlighted was benefit of lemon tea, gargling with hot water and salt to aspirin. So different type of information they were happening. So India is not untouched by the infodemic. Crisis of fake news is much more severe in India largely because the country is rapidly going social media based and the sloppy regulation of social media because we don't have a strict regulation in Indian system. So much as 376 million people are using now different kind of social media platform. Even before fact checking site debunked this millions of fake messages including catchy and appealing videos. For example, Gaumutra to cure the disease began to show up in the most prominent social media platform. Fake news propagating home remedies like vitamin C, warding of the virus, several fake videos. Even the picture of Davis Ketty was used. Even worse was the fake news about the non-vegetarian food, particularly how consuming chicken could lead to COVID-19. And this resulted in the hundred of poultry farmers culling chicken worth crore of rupees. In some cases, set them free. But reliable estimate chicken farmers incurred a staggering around 2,000 crore loss because of the fake rumors. अब कैसा रोना ये पैक से ठीक होगा कोरोना. So these kind of information they were happening across the globe. So how these fake news can have impact? WHO says that COVID-19 related infodemic is just as dangerous as the virus itself. False preventive measures such as traditional African treatment, fake remedies like eating garlic, drinking water, warm water, lemon slices, adulterated alcohol, hinder the fight against illness because you are not going to be cured through this misinformation. Similarly, conspiracy theories like China manufacturing the virus, 5G cell towers, Bill Gates funding. So such rumors exaggerated the fact, fuel new form xenophobia online. Many people of Chinese or East Asian origin were being insulted, assaulted, denied services. Religious minority and elite group are being blamed online for this spread. So how this role of the digital media, because digital media, we are all more into the digital media because of the online and easy accessibility. So enabling wider dissemination of the news. Participatory nature of social media enables information exchange. So it is helping also, but on the other hand, it also increases the possibility of rapid dissemination of inaccurate information. Natural search for explanation in times of uncertainty lead to people to find answer in misinformation and conspiracy. According to a study, top link related common disease in 40% cases contain misinformation and was shared 451,000 times in the period of last 5 years. So this is how the digital media is spreading fast the misinformation. And Facebook has placed warning labels about 50 million pieces of content based on around 7,500 articles by independent fast-checking partner. But Facebook alone directed over 2 billion people to resource from the WHO and other health authorities to the COVID-19 Information Center, pop-up, Facebook, Instagram, with over 350 million people clicking through learn more. However, the magnitude of the information on this application makes it difficult to fact-check all information. For instance, account Center for Countering Digital Hate, Facebook and Instagram failed to take action against nearly 9 out of 10 containing misinformation about the coronavirus, which are reported on the platform. So whatever information or misinformation is put on the Facebook or Twitter, even these Facebook and Twitter, they are unable to do the fact checking. So how Icmr was dealing with this kind of information, because a lot of information was being generated by the Icmr, and Icmr was also in the fake news. So Icmr has been in the middle of the infodemic. There have been a series of fake news which have been attributed to Icmr and Icmr scientists. And most of these items have been circulated through social media and closed messaging platform. Due to the nature of these closed messaging platform, it becomes harder to track the messages and counter this information, from where this information is coming. For example, there was a news on the WhatsApp postpone travel abroad for 2 years, do not eat outside food for 2 years. So 21 points were given and they were related to ICMR. ICMR is saying, please don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And this was 100% fake news. And we put on our website that this is not the ICMR information. Similarly, there were many other information. Corona kit banakar Gujarati company ko de diya gaya. So there were many information which were related to ICMR. So how we were dealing to tackle these information? ICMR set up a portal for the dissemination of COVID-19 related activities using its website. So independent portal was put up on the ICMR website, and that was providing the real information, the actual information on what was happening in the ICMR. And through its social media account, ICMR is providing regular update on the testing figure, any scientific breakthrough achieved by the ICMR scientists. So regularly we are updating the information on the social media platform also. We also set up the communication unit at the ICMR headquarters, and we identified the nodal communication officer at the ICMR Institute. So we were having regular interaction with the ICMR Institute, with the ICMR scientists, what kind of information to be transmitted, what should not be transmitted. We did the capacity building programs through media crisis management, through social media training also, and we developed the media policy. And Dr. Shantan Gangri was involved while we were developing this media policy, how our scientists should deal with the media. We developed the crisis communication policies, crisis communication workshop, how scientists should deal in the time of crisis communication. And we specifically developed a COVID-19 media policy. At the time of COVID-19, what should be the policy, how to deal, how to interact with the media, so that each and ICMR scientist, they should be aware. They should not interact with the media, who is the right person to interact with the media, what kind of information can be shared, what kind of information cannot be shared with the media. We developed and mapped a journalist at the regional level, national level, international level. So we have a complete list of journalists. We created a WhatsApp group also of journalists so that the information from the ICMR can be shared on the WhatsApp group so that journalists should get the correct information. We regularly did the media interaction. We regularly did the press conferences, media briefing. We also come up with the press release so that the actual information should come in the public domain. Then we also publish some opinion editorial by the leadership so that whatever is happening, whatever research, new thing is coming, it should come in the correct fashion. So how we can stop this, the misinformation and the fake news? So amid an unprecedented global health crisis, health journalists, they are also facing double whammy, because one side they have to report effectively on the pandemic, what is happening and how the nation is dealing with the crisis. On the other hand, there is a tide of misinformation, which is spread faster than the virus itself. So COVID-19 has challenged the fast-checking community across the globe, and they're working around the clock to wake up to deal with the spiraling infodemic crisis. There are independent fast-checkers who move quickly to respond to growing amount of misinformation about COVID-19. If you look into the figure, number of English language fact checkers rose more than 1900% from January to March. So there are many fact checkers, those who are checking the information, and they are identifying it, whether this is the correct information, this is still fake information. So how to prevent and protect one from the misinformation? How we can prevent? WHO has also launched a health alert on the WhatsApp about a chatbot on the Facebook Messenger to provide accurate information about the virus. UNDP support a Coronavirus Fact Alliance, which brings together more than 100 fact checkers from over 45 countries in the international fact checking network. So infodemic is as real as COVID-19. As a virus, we must take every precaution to protect ourselves and our loved one. If it is not stopped quickly, fake news shared on social media quickly becomes viral and can influence a large number of users. So this is our responsibility, how we can stop the fake news. While physical distancing, hygiene measures, wearing a mask currently seem to be the best means of limiting the spread of COVID-19, because we don't have vaccine, we don't have any specific treatment. Similarly, vigilance is also one of the best way of eradicating the false and the fake news. So how we can reduce the speed of misinformation? Be critical when you look at the social media, number one. Number two, don't leave false information in your online network. You can politely ask the person who shared it to remove it. Report the false information to the platform administrator so that they can take appropriate action. When in doubt, take the time to verify the shared information. Make more noise than people who share the false information. Out of 178 fact checkers, the website Boom says conducted since the onset of COVID-19 in the country, as much as 35% of them were fake videos, 29% images, And a similar percentage were doctored message on a range of issues such as fake diagnosis, fake treatment, falsified quotes by celebrities with their photos, false notification, and lockdown guidelines, among others. So act like a fact checker. So each and every individual, they have to work like a fact checker. What they can do, consider the source from where you are getting the information. Click away from the story to investigate the site. If it looks dubious, check it, mission or affiliation, contact the information, and read beyond the headlines. Headlines can be misleading and one must read the whole information piece before sharing the information. You can do the research, probe the originator. If searching for similar material from the same person, put the name in Google, search Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, people tend to use the same name, and use a verified source, whether the information is coming from the WHO, from the Icmr, from the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. So you have to identify the source from where the information is coming. And key Indian platform, those who are visiting the fake news check website, Alt News, Boom Fact Check also runs a WhatsApp number for fact checking. Fact Sindo available in 13 Indian language. Indian scientists respond to COVID-19. ICRC is a grassroots collective of more than 500 scientists have joined together to form the Indian Scientist Response to COVID-19, committed to debunking false information about the virus, organized through Google Group. The group has expanded to include a website with resources for the public, clinicians, and researchers. And there are other interesting stories, interesting initiative, how they can bust the fake news. Stop the Spread is a global campaign which aims to raise the awareness about the risk of misinformation around the COVID-19. And it encourages them to double check information with trusted sources. In places like refugees camps where the availability of digital tools is limited, for example, in Bangladesh, fighting rumors and myths about COVID-19 does not require sophisticated artificial intelligence or other digital platform. Refugees in Bangladesh, Cox's Bazar, they use the bicycle and the loudspeaker to deliver the accurate information door to door. So that is how you can transmit the exact information. So what is the way forward? So India has been simultaneously fighting two viruses. One is the real and other is the fake, one but equally lethal. Fake news and misinformation have created numerous hurdles for government at all levels, whether it's the central government, the state government, or the local, in fight against the pandemic. Authorities have found repeatedly engaged in issuing clarification to keep people away from the falling prey to such rumors and fake news. Even one saw the report on social media companies such as Google, Facebook, and other intermediary platform in mid-February, deciding to create an Information Trust Alliance, ITA, to tackle fake current. With the existing information technology, I think our other partners, they will speak on this. The IT Act 2008 providing to be a toothless to tackle fake content. The central and state government have invoked the provision of Section 54 of the Disaster Management Act 2005 to check the menace. So this is how we can do, and we can try to check the information and try to escape and try to prevent the misinformation, and how we can get the correct information. So this is really a difficult situation. It was happening previously, but now with the COVID-19, disinformation and misinformation, this is happening a lot, and WHO has called it an infodemic. So only purpose is that we have to find out the exact source, whether it is coming from a reliable source, WHO in case of COVID-19, Icmr, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, and where then there is a misinformation, we have to cross-check it, recheck it, and find out the real source. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I am hopeful that hopefully this will help and will be useful for the others, those who have joined from the other sources. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rajni. That was a wide-ranging and very informative presentation. You have outlined the various types of misinformation. You have explained disinformation, malinformation, information that is intended to harm, deliberate lies, that is disinformation, and also just information that is spread by those who believe it's true when it's not true. And you have also given us a clear view of how it affects public health as a sector, but also the public in terms of false claims of cures and other falsehoods that are coming through this channel. And then also have given us your thoughts about how we can verify sources of the information that we consume, but also the information that we forward or distribute to others. Thank you so much for that. And I think this will also come up maybe also in the other presentations that will follow, but from different perspectives. Now we'll go to a brief question and answer. Maybe just two questions directed particularly to Dr. Rajni and this presentation. And for that, I'll hand over to Rita.
Yes, sir. Yes. Okay, the first question is we are taking from Vinayat Subarche from EU delegation. So he's asking, for instance, is giving figure of daily test mixing RT-PCR and antigen test of low sensitivity needing RT-PCR confirmation when negative in suspect cases. Does not give a clear view of the situation. Calculating positivity rate on this aggregate number would be misleading. Is the solution not to publish more detailed information? Would ICMR contemplate such a solution, data split per type of test and purpose? Rajnikant sir.
Okay, sir. Thank you, Rita. Actually, we have worked a lot in this area. RT-PCR is the gold standard. And this antigen test is meant only for the emergency situation in the containment zone, when there is a huge amount of pressure, when there is a backlog of. So antigen test is a quick test. It can give you a result in a half an hour, while RT-PCR gives you a report in 4 to 6 hours. So all positive through antigen test, they are real positive, there is no doubt. And those symptomatic negative, they have to be retested through the RT-PCR. So no one is missing through the antigen test. So those who are positive through antigen test, they have some low sensitivity, but they have a high specificity. But the positive is real positive. And those who are negative, but they are having symptoms, they are having headache, they are having fever. So in case they are symptomatic, they have to be retested through the RT-PCR so that no one is left behind. And those who are negative, they are negative. If they don't have any symptom, it means they are negative, there is no need to do for the RT-PCR. So RT-PCR is still the gold standard. Rita?
Please unmute Rita if you're talking. Please.
Yeah, thank you, Rajnikant sir. The next question is from Sudarshan Roy Sargu. Is there any system in place in India to regularly check the publicity floated misinformation, disinformation, and fake information, especially in social media, and to warn the society not to come into the trap of dubious information?
So far as this knowledge, to my knowledge, I don't have there is any platform, there is any source where the fake information is available and you can track the information. Only solution is that whatever information you are looking for, get it from the reliable sources. If you are interested in the COVID-19, check the WHO website, check the Ministry of Health and Family website, check the ICMR website. Don't trust on the social media like WhatsApp or Facebook or Twitter. They are not the reliable source of information. If you are looking for information on COVID-19, it is advisable. Check the reliable source from the WHO, from the ministry, or from the state website. There is no separate platform where you can check the false information or the fake news.
Thank you, Rajni sir. We will take remaining questions at the end of this webinar. Now we have, thank you, sir. Now we have our second opinion poll question. So now you can see the second opinion poll question on your screen. Does it matter to you whether or not the news you are reading is considered real news or fake news? Please answer fast. Now we are closing this opinion poll. Thank you for voting. Over to you, Mr. Delamini.
Thank you, Rita. Thank you very much. And we now go to the second presenter. As introduced earlier, Dr. Kanika Seth. She will share with us some thoughts and perspective on how to combat fake news in India. Over to you, Dr. Seth. Please unmute.
Thank you, Mr. Delamini. This is a great opportunity to interact with all the stakeholders, all the distinguished guests on the panel, Dr. Rajnikant, Ms. Surbi, and all the team members of TERI. I must congratulate you along with UNESCO to organize this webinar. A very pertinent subject indeed. And from the legal standpoint also, we've been examining this for quite some time since it is percolated at a very, very fast pace because of the technology. The unique technology itself is such that a small fake news can create havoc and it can spread like fire. So I was fortunate to be also a part of the deliberations when experts were deliberating on how to curb fake news in India. By the Ministry of Home Affairs. Consultations have been held from time to time. We have been drafting certain, policy measures, and some of them have, already been implemented, while the others are in the pipeline. So, coming to this, issue of fake news, I just like to share my screen before I proceed. I hope the screen is visible.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Please go ahead.
Very well. So when we are talking about fake news as a subject, it is not only a social issue and something which is very, very linked to public health and safety, particularly in COVID times, but also it can have legal ramifications. And that's what people, don't realize, the accountability aspect when they're looking at a particular fake news, the responsibility, verification, and then only forwarding it, ahead is something that, often escapes a common man, whether he should or should not forward a particular news, because it creates panic in the, and disturbs the public tranquility, and that's not in public interest. And therefore, law comes into picture. Coming from the legal world, we look at these issues very seriously. Particularly when they affect nation at large. And now with the infodemic and the pandemic together, fake news is certainly one of the topmost priorities to be addressed, also from the legal, field. If you look at fake news, I've seen what exactly it really means. It is a term where a news could be fabricated. It could be also manipulated. And that it could also comprise of misinformation or disinformation. I'll be deliberating on these terms specifically, but to put it in a nutshell, it's very, very interesting to see the falsity element is definitely there, whether it is misinformation or it is malinformation or it is disinformation. The false propaganda is there, and the idea is either to manipulate the real news and tweak it to suit one's own ulterior objectives, or it could be, in order to deceive the public. So it is something which is also intended to mislead the public. So there are various objectives. Either it could be to deceive, to mislead, or to manipulate information for your own, particular agendas. So that is what fake news really, can mean. And in various contexts, it could have various intentions behind a particular news being spread. Now, I've looked at the Council of Europe's, Information Disorder Report of November 2017, where these terms have been also explained. And when you look at that, misinformation particularly talks about when information is shared, but no harm is as such intended. And disinformation is when the false information is knowingly shared in order to cause some harm to somebody, whether it is an organization or some section of society. Malinformation, on the other hand, is when a genuine information is shared to cause harm or in order to mislead public also. It could also be intended to, bring out in open an information which is otherwise private. It could also have that sort of an angle to it. Now, the intention and knowledge, there are two different elements when we talk about false information. And while a news like, myths like COVID is spread through, by eating, say, non-vegetarian food, is something which is a myth. It's not a fact. And therefore, it could be misleading and could basically deter people from having non-vegetarian food. It is a false information. On the other hand, there were a lot of other myths like drinking, a particular concoction or selling of certain medicines that could be a cure to COVID, whereas it is not based on truth but on falsity. Again, that is a false information in order to mislead the public. So it could be opinion based, it could be fact based, but it is a myth or a hoax. And it could be also for, say, influencing elections. We've seen this huge spate of fake news during election time in India. So that is also one of the agendas that is possible. So we must understand the context where that information is coming from, and the source verification is therefore paramount for us. So when we look at the forms of fake news, it could be in the form of headlines, it could be doctored videos. These days we call them deepfakes. A lot of them are being in use, and rumors, it could be planted stories, photographs, hoaxes, and clickbaits and motivated stories. So n number of ways in which a false news or a fake news can spread. And these days, through social media particularly, it spreads like fire, basically. Now, why does it spread so fast? When we see studies, Facebook and WhatsApp, they're particularly very, very rampantly used. 75% of the respondents in a study said that they use social media, and that's where they read the news and this forward it further. And 82% are already using WhatsApp, and 52% agreed that they actually consume news there, they read news there. So that is the reason. I think Dr. Rajnikant also mentioned that one must also check the source. So one has to go back to the real sites. For example, if you're looking for government information, look at the government site. WHO, you can refer for public, health and safety guidelines or advisories. Indian, Ministry of Health data and Ministry of Health advisories, and specifically for cyber crimes during COVID, we would refer to IT, ministries guidelines, because there they would advise you what video conference platforms to be used, what are fake apps not to be clicked, what are the fake news or fake links which shouldn't be clicked. So because phishing rackets were spreading with the with the help of these fake links and news. So that is what was being advised, and the original source is what we must see, the authentic source. How it works is that they often, fake news would employ very catchy phrases, or they would try to even maximize traffic and profit through certain interesting, discounts or offers put in terms of reading that particular news article. They would even incentivize that, and they look real. These websites are sometimes even phishing websites where they would steal certain data, even financial data could be siphoned off by clicking on a fake link. And that's very rampantly done in the COVID times. And in fact, the Home Ministry has given 86% as the index, percentage of crime rate specifically on digital media, which has risen during the lockdown period. So therefore, it is important to understand the modus operandi, how the criminals work on the internet. While they spread fake news, they're not only manipulating the views and thoughts of people, but also they may run simultaneously illegal commercial gain enterprises through creating phishing websites, through creating fake links and other channels by which they make illegally some monies. Even the Supreme Court of India was concerned over fake news. So when there was a petition there in which the Supreme Court of India observed that the media has to maintain strong sense of responsibility to ensure the unverified news doesn't spread on social media. and they say that we don't want to interfere with the freedom of speech of press, which is definitely paramount. But when it talks about COVID and pandemic or other kinds of fake news, media has to step in and be more accountable. And also I think people have to understand their responsibility and role while they view a particular news. So with this, I think we go to the legislations. What is the law in the country? After all, we don't have a current provision in the IT Act which tackles fake news. We must have it, and that's what we've been working on. There has to be something tangible to prohibit and deter criminals or even common men from circulation of any kind of fake news. The Indian Penal Code currently has a few sections which apply. For example, Section 124A of the IPC, it punishes any form of speech where it is sedition is involved. Any kind of forging or fabrication of news even could fall under Section 465 and 71 or 471 of IPC. Section 5051B talks about spreading false news as a result in fear or alarm. If it's creating fear or alarm in the public, it's also punishable offense. 153 section talks about wantonly giving away provocation with the intent to cause riots, because some information can be so infuriating that it could hurt the sentiments of public at large or a particular section or a community, and create a distress or public tranquility could be spoiled. Then Section 153A talks about promotion of enmity between different groups on the ground of religion, birth, language, caste. Those kind of news which could be prejudicial to the harmony of the nation are also covered under this provision. Section 295A is talk about the malicious acts to outrage the religious feelings of others. 336 talks about acts which endanger life or personal safety of others. So during COVID times, Section 54 of Disaster Management Act in particular has been much used to curb even fake news. And the punishments vary depending on the provision which is used. It could be up to 3 years or more, sometimes less, but they are all punishable acts, and coupled with fine also that can be imposed. The 267th Law Commission report given in March 2017 recommends 2 new provisions to be added, and they are relevant in terms of curbing fake news. One is Section 153C, which talks about any kind of news which or an act where on the grounds of religion, race, caste or community, any kind of threatening or grave words have been used to cause fear or alarm in the public, imprisonment of 2 years and fine or both. Section 505A talks about publicly, intentionally on the grounds of religion, or again, caste, community, there is a grave threat given or derogatory words have been used with the intent to invoke violence or provoke unlawful violence. Again, imprisonment of 1 year and fine or more. Sections of the IT Act, by and large, we don't have a clear section, as I said, but Section 66C can come into play in cases of identity theft where fake accounts are being created. Fortunately, we have seen a good trend where Facebook and other entities have begun verifying their accounts of their users and have sort of clear-cut policies now to some extent on what is allowed and what is not allowed on their platforms. Much has become necessary, even with the new Consumer Protection Act 2019 guidelines and the e-commerce guidelines of 2020. So much has changed, but yet there are loopholes which we need to still address. Section 66D comes into play where there is cheating by personation, where a computer is used and there is a fake account maybe, and there somebody cheats or deceives somebody by impersonating as someone else. Punishment up to 3 years and again fine or more. And the central government has the power to check surveillance of the traffic data and other things. Therefore, when there is a law enforcement needed, they can get data from the social media platforms. Section 79 makes the social media or other intermediaries liable in cases where they have been informed there is fake news, for example, or any other illegal content on their platform, and they fail to remove it within 36 hours if they have been given a court order, or if a government agency has been, has directed them to remove certain content. and they fail to do so, they could be even liable under the IT Act. Now, when we come to regulatory aspect, you see what all, apart from the law and the provisions that we currently have, which are the bodies. The Press Council of India is a regulatory body which warns against, these any kind of illegal activities, or rather, I would say it promotes good journalism and disapproves the conduct which is not suitable to that profession. Apart from that, we have News Postcasters Association, which talks about private television news channels and moderates their ethics and activities in consonance with their, line of work. Then Broadcasting Content Complaint Council. This is also another body which looks into the kind of content which is floated on the TV broadcasting channels. Digital News Publishers Association, again a regulatory body which has media companies involved, fostering good practices and safe practices in the digital space particularly. Then if we see the Indian efforts which are made, and globally also, we will just glance through a couple of initiatives. But from the Indian standpoint, regulators, social media, they should definitely need to control fake news in the respect that there is a collaborative model which needs to work. And during recent elections also, we've seen a lot of curbing of fake news by new protocols which have been added, especially on Facebook and also WhatsApp. Not more than 5 forwards were allowed, which is a good sign. During COVID also, we had advisories by various ministries, especially IT ministry, on how the phishing websites percolate, and we need to stop even fake donation sites and fake news pertaining to various services of people which were non-existent, and they were just trying to encash on the panic situation in the public. Press Information Bureau has created a fact-checking unit in order to tackle fake news on social media. And similarly, apart from the PIB and the social media platforms, we also have, like UNDP was also one of the bodies which has taken a good stand on this issue. Globally, if you see, in US, there have been certain initiatives again by social media platforms also, and the Congress is taking some serious look on this law aspect of it. UK, there have been task forces formed. Canada has a new protocol which they are trying to see, particularly from the point of view of elections, controlling of fake news. Malaysia has a new law against dissemination of fake news, and it's called as the Anti-Fake News Act. And Singapore passed a law in 2019, Protection from Online Falsehood and Manipulation Act. We seriously need probably just not a provision, but actually a separate in India. Fact-checking, we have all promoted fact-checking, and strongly the government as well as regulatory, non-regulatory, private stakeholders are working on this field now, checking up where this fake news is being spread and nipping them in the bud rather than allowing them to spread across the platforms. Google and Google Digital News Initiative is one of the initiatives in social media platforms. Facebook has done some initiatives. Even on Twitter, there have been active, I would say, blockages of accounts which are not, which are not genuine. They have been blocked or suspended. And similarly, we've seen some new features being added in WhatsApp also, which is introducing a search the web feature to spot fake news, especially forwarded news. And if it is fake, you can actually verify it on Google. So what is important here is that there shouldn't be a conflict of interest. While social media platforms make a lot of money by using, ads or other techniques to, basically behavioral advertising, make their revenues, yet that should not be at the cost of public health and safety. And therefore, it's important to have ethical standards very clearly laid down and implemented and monitored in India. So that's what's need of the hour, I feel. And while all these social media platforms have put in, for example, they're outsourcing their fact checking to factcheck.org or PolitiFact and certain new enterprises which have come only on the side of, fact checking. Government also has done some good initiatives like banning TikTok, for instance, and other apps which were spreading maybe fake news in India. So there have been some good measures, but a lot of measures remain untapped. We can really use artificial intelligence today. I was speaking at an event conference on data science, talking to data scientists. There's a huge scope in using data science, data mining, and AI in this particular area of curbing fake news. That has a huge potential too. Similarly, Twitter, I've seen, has added a fact-checking label to tweets with potentially misleading or false claims, where you can verify whether this is fake news or not. And this slide will basically name a couple of these fact-checking websites like Boom, Art News, MetaFact, Hoaxine, Snopes, and there are many more. But if one doesn't want to use these particularly, there are even newspapers. They have put their fact-checking columns on their on their portals. It's possible to even check in the newspapers and news portals. They have a separate column or a blog for fact checking as well. Then there are some new research and development activities. I found this TruthShare has another technology to detect fake news. In the days of facial recognition, in the days of AI, and when we talk about robotics, this is a third identity model, which they are trying to use anonymity, de-identification of content which is there on the social media platforms, could be fake news, and identifying them again. It's basically trying to get hold of the information which is on the social media platforms and verifying whether this is genuine or not, and then not really misusing any kind of private information which comes there, but only using the content part of it and not merely using the private information. So it's an interesting model one can look at. And I would like to basically conclude my thoughts in one slide here by saying that, in my view, regulatory and self-regulatory mechanisms by private stakeholders both need to work together in order to combat this issue. Number two, media needs to promote strong professional journalism, and I am a firm believer of ethics. While I am also a strong advocate of freedom of speech, I know there is a fine balancing really needed in this area. Third is the emphasis on the principles of accountability, transparency, credibility. We're in the times when there is digital citizenship today. I have myself advised a couple of companies who are floating digital citizenship, even with portals or websites where news channels are being run, where the news is being created by the volunteers, the users of the platforms themselves. So particularly for those kind of sites also, it is important that not only they are just creating a social media platform, but they need to instill in their users a very strong sense of ethics in terms of journalism. If they are practicing, for example, if they're recording some event is happening or a mishap has happened on a roadside, they have to have the genuine video, and that only should go, not something which is doctored or something which they have only got as a hearsay and they're just simply forwarding it. So the accountability principles are very, very important. Technology companies and regulatory bodies should invest in tools which identify fake news. We said technology companies, again, role of AI and other new technologies is definitely paramount here. Also, it's important to highlight that legally you need to have terms and conditions of every website. You need to have a social media policy also for every organization, because every organization has in closed door or maybe open door communications happening where these kind of news are spread. So every organization or entity, be it government or non-government, needs to have strong ICT culture. And in terms of ICT culture, we ourselves design these policies, and earlier it used to be restricted to non-confidentiality and confidentiality concerns or IP policy. It slowly moved on to IT security policy, and from that paradigm now we are following privacy by design. When we say privacy by design, we have to look at GDPR in the Europe and the new personal data protection bill which is there in India. And even currently we may not have the personal data protection act enacted yet, but we do have right to privacy upheld by the Supreme Court of India in the K.S. Puttaswamy case, where the Aadhaar was challenged. So having said that, we are in a place where, and in the times where privacy has to be respected. So even fake news, when it violates privacy of a person, that is an interesting area to introspect as well. Now, this takes me to, again, role of AI. I have already spoken about it. We need to tackle deep fakes and memes. And citizens and individuals need to be understand, their legal implications of forwarding, and entities their vicarious responsibility of how their employees are acting in their organizations. Strict rules and technical means to govern the use of social media by users and curbing fake news. So strict rules and technical means also, like when I said privacy by design, it means that there is a technical method inculcated in the platform itself, which allows or disallows certain features or activities to be to be undertaken. So that has to be also done. Law enforcement mechanisms have to be strengthened. Capacity building has to be strengthened, and how courts will also view this, fake news as an issue, and new amendments in the IT Act, particularly, or maybe even have a separate legislation to deal with fake news. Is my takeaway. I mean, that's how I view this issue, and these are my views. I hope you would appreciate that some of these can be really useful in curbing fake news today.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Seth.
Stop my sharing after this. Yes.
Yes. You had concluded, right?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I thought you had concluded. So sorry, I came in rather early there. But thank you so very much. That was very captivating. I think this is the missing angle, at least in the public space, when it comes to discussing misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, and all the ills of information that are out there, is the legal aspect. And your way forward captures some of our, I would say, queries, questions, maybe in some cases worries about how the courts and how the the government or the machinery of government will handle those who propagate misinformation or fake news, as we call it.
Yes.
But your way forward captures it all: self-regulation, higher responsibility, transparency, and so on. But also individual awareness of the legal implications of engaging in fake news. I think those are the important things, and we have highlighted also the need to build capacities of citizens, individuals, institutions have institutional cultures that guard against this. As a citizen, well, I'm a citizen of a country, not India in this case, but like all citizens, we're worried about a state that wants to follow us everywhere. We're worried about a state that wants to do surveillance online. We're worried that there is no place to hide. But at the same time, it's clear that we are being called individually to practice higher standards of ethics, higher standards of responsibility. Thank you very much for those thoughts. And with that, I'll hand you over to Rama Trivedi of Unesco, who will ask, or rather who will pose questions from the audience. Over to you, Rama.
Thank you so much, Hezekiel, and thank you so much, Dr. Seth, for the wonderful presentations. So I'll just read out a couple of questions that we have. Muhammad Nizamuddin is asking, if a person receives a misinformation or fake news regarding COVID-19 in particular, and if the person forwards the message to his group or a group of individuals without verifying the facts, what is the legal recourse? Where do we stand there from a legal perspective?
Okay, so there could be this particular aspect can be taken like negligence. For example, not taking due diligence or due care. It would be covered under even tort liability. We call it as a tort liability. And, if somebody relies on that news and there is an injury caused to the person, for example, he or she takes a particular medicine which doesn't suit the person and, suffers a harm as a result of that. then yes, there could be a claim of damages also against the person. So the accountability aspect, therefore, is very important. The criminal liability will only arise if there is an intention to commit a crime. Without the malintention or the knowledge that this is likely to cause harm to somebody, the criminal liability will not be there. So that is what we have to see. The provisions and ingredients of what section really apply in this case. But if it is not intentionally done in order to cause harm, certainly negligence is one aspect which it could be directly applicable in such a scenarios.
Okay, thank you. So we move to the next question. Dr. Babita Gaur is asking, pertaining to your presentation, that as you mentioned, Doctor said that there are regulatory bodies and laws in place. Then why do we have fake news problem still? Why the problem still exists? And how is there any mechanism that we trace the source of fake news?
Yes, it is possible. Since no one particular, I would say there is general law in the country. You have IPC, for instance, in the criminal law, and then you have tort law in the civil domain. However, there are specialized laws and policies governing every specialized service or an activity or an industry also. So, for example, for journalists, we have separate policies and guidelines given also. Those have to be adhered to, and their own disciplinary inquiries and mechanisms have been built into their specific industries to take care of such deviant activities or any kind of cases which fall under this fake news category. Having said that, since this information is particularly spread through the digital media, the unique nature of internet is such that there is a lot of anonymity involved in it. So it's very easy to create a fake news or a fake handle on a social media platform and spread news or put a blog or put a post. And there is very little that even social media companies can do in terms of due diligence. For example, if it is child pornography, we know this is prohibited world over. And the companies are very careful in using those particular vocabulary terms to pre-filter content out. But in cases of fake news, we don't know what will be that vocabulary, because there's just a huge dimension to be looked into. So only when they come to know there's an actual notice given to the particular website that there is this illegal news or a fake news on their portal, can they remove it. So there has to be an actual notice, even as per the section 79 of the IT Act, to do the same. So the reason why we are not able to curb it is because there are billions of pages on the web, and only when it comes to somebody's notice will he report it, and there will be a public grievance officer who will take action and remove that content. That is why it is important to have a public grievance officer for every website, and also a report abuse button, so that any citizen who comes to know there is something wrong with this page can report immediately.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Seth. I also take this opportunity to read out the third opinion poll question. Rita, can we please reflect it on the screen?
Yeah, so the third opinion,
So the third question is, are you aware about the fact-checking? Oh, all right. Should spreading fake news be a punishable offense? The options being yes and not decided.
I think we should close the opinion poll now, because yes, now we are ending the polling, and now you can view the result on your screen. 85% says yes, and the 15% not decided.
Thank you so much, Rita. Over to you, Hezekiah.
Thank you very much, Rama. And with that, we go to the last panelist, but certainly not the least, Ms. Surabhi Malik. She's going to give us a vaccine. Now, every mention of vaccine these days is exciting news. I mean, everybody's looking for a vaccine. But she's going to give us the misinformation vaccine, how to protect yourself from fake news and online falsehoods. Over to you, Ms. Malik.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dlamini and the entire team at Unesco and Terry and other eminent guests, Dr. Rajnikant and Dr. Kanika Seth. I think I'm very glad, first of all, that you sort of organized this discourse. The problem is such that I am a big supporter of more talk on this subject, certainly, to find a good solution in the long run. It has been a complex problem for us because it's been fairly new to us in the information ecosystem, which is why I think any amount of conversations that we do will help us come to sort of an apt solution in the long run. So thank you so much for having me here and for arranging this webinar and having different panelists talk about different aspects of this huge problem. And yes, Dr. Dlamini, like you rightly said, the very thought of vaccine, since there's been huge long wait for the COVID-19 vaccine, we all have been waiting with bated breath. And we've seen, in fact, news around false news around COVID-19 vaccine. I thought it was interesting for us to see what we can do to save ourselves from this infodemic that we all talk about. And hence I'm going to be looking at some points in my presentation which will help our audience in their own capacities save themselves from this huge problem. I think Karnika set the stage very right when she said we probably will need to see how each one does their part to tackle this problem. It isn't, for one group, say the government or the tech platforms or private, companies or news media. I think we all have a role to play. And in this presentation, hopefully our audience will get to have some takeaways on how they can develop and practice good information hygiene habits. With that, I'll quickly share my screen. I hope you all can see my screen now. So
yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. So like you mentioned in my introduction, I work for Internews, which is an international non-profit organization, and we work in very many countries, around the globe with one primary mission and motto, which is that information can change lives. We truly believe that armed with, trustworthy, good flow of information, societies and communities can take the decisions that they need to make for themselves and lead a good life. That's primarily been, the main mission of all the programs that we run in different parts of, the world. And also in India, this has been the core theme that we've been trying to address through our work on tackling, misinformation. I would say, I'm sure all of us, agree that information is just so key to us that it can be equated to the air we breathe. And the reason why we need to talk about information hygiene is that it arms us with the, right information so we can take good decisions for us in our lives. But this new problem of misinformation in the ecosystem ever since the advent of technology and smartphones getting cheaper and data packs being getting cheaper, it's almost like another form of virus. So yes, we've all been talking about respiratory hygiene and hand hygiene, but it's equally important for us, I believe, to talk about this information virus, misinformation virus that's plaguing our information ecosystem. Like the other eminent panelists did talk about, fact checking has been an important factor over the last 2-3 years, at least, in checking or making a dent in this misinformation disorder, so to say. But I also believe we need to focus on media literacy and really information hygiene practices, which will actually be the vaccine. How do we protect ourselves? How do we analyze and critically analyze online information as a user of the internet? And Internews' two-pronged approach, for this has been, one, in 2018, we began a capacity building program for journalists. Back then, if some of you have been following the issue would know, there weren't as many fact checkers in the country, hardly about 2 to 3. And a lot of newsrooms themselves were struggling with, how to tackle this huge problem of misinformation. In fact, sometimes they did end up in the rush of, breaking news, publishing wrong content themselves. So that's where we came to the picture, and we held, training programs and capacity building programs for journalists and newsrooms to help them learn the critical fact-checking skills in collaboration with some Indian fact checkers and some global fact checkers. which led to a good amount of work. I'm very glad that in both the first two presentations by Dr. Rajnikant and by Dr. Karnika Seth, there were some of our trainers mentioned who've done some good work to take to the wider audience the credible and right, trustworthy information. The second aspect of it is, aiding critical thinking skills and focusing on media and information literacy, which we are doing with a new program, which is called Fact Shala, where we hope that now that there is a huge base of, journalists doing good work on, tackling misinformation, they will be able to help not just through fact checks and stories they do, but also help the public at large really understand how they evaluate, they should evaluate an information that they read, or do it like fact checkers, just like Dr. Rajnikant, said. So essentially helping internet users, understand the various, nature of online content, different neighborhoods that we, sort of operate in, and then learn for themselves what is it that, they should believe and they should not. So like I said, we earlier had a network of trainers. We launched this program with, some partners where we train newsrooms and journalists, and they went back and, did more trainings in their own cities with journalists in their newsrooms, and did a lot of work. Collectively, these trainings helped tackle the misinformation problem by increasing fact checkers in newsrooms. In the last 2 years, we've had about, I think, a lot of newsrooms now doing, independent fact checking initiatives, or they have dedicated teams who help their own audiences in their own languages now, understand whether, some of the viral posts that they're seeing on the social media platforms that they use are right or not. It has led to an increase in fact-checking stories and also a lot more initiatives. More importantly, there's been a push to fact-check language, fact-checking. What we saw when we were earlier, starting off this previous program was that a lot of resources on, fact-checking were primarily available only in English. So it was very difficult for, vernacular language publications or newsrooms or even users to know, what is truth about, their own news that they see in their own language. So our program, since it was localized for Indian audience, and we took a lot of trainers from different languages on, we onboarded them and, trained them, and then they went back and started initiatives in their own languages. So this in turn helped, give a good push to language fact checking as well. More importantly, it also led to, good collaborations of fact checkers with the government and tech platforms, specifically in COVID-19. A lot of our, program trainers and journalists who've been trained in our programs are now helping, the government or, the local police and administration, and also tech platforms surface and amplify fact-checking contents even more. I mean, 2 years ago, I would say the fact-checking organizations like the ones that, Dr. Kanika Seth and Rajnikant sir mentioned were, teeny organizations with not much reach. But I think with these collaborations, we've been able to amplify and take fact-checking to a lot more, a broader audience. Many of our programs have also supported some media literacy, initiatives, and which is what we're taking up, now. So our new program, which is called Fact Shala, is a news and information literacy program, which is essentially aimed at helping adults, which is new internet users in non-metro cities, understand and analyze, the nature of online content better. We will organize, and we do organize trainings and workshops in different formats to help them critically analyze the information they receive in very interactive ways. For example, with live demos, with some fun games. This is a program we've launched in collaboration, with Data Leads and with the support of Google.org. Essentially, the idea is to bring together journalists, fact checkers, media educators, and with the help of, nonprofits, take them to their communities. So these people who probably learn these skills, how do they take it to the end users? We have a huge internet population, and I'm sure you all would, agree with me that a lot of them are very new to this digital, landscape. There's been such a huge shift, in the way we consume information now. Till about a couple of years ago, all of us were, largely reading news, either on newspapers or, via television channels. Then, of course, came websites. But, ever since the advent of social media, a lot of end users and new internet users spend much more time on these platforms, sifting through a lot of content that's there. But unfortunately, that's not verified content and not coming from credible sources. Hence, we believe this, initiative will bring together, these stakeholders, and we're also open to, collaborating with other stakeholders, working with local governments, schools, colleges, to tackle this problem together. So, coming to the topic, like I said, hence I believe information hygiene, since information is so key to us, it's very important to talk about how do we keep, our information hygiene good practices in place. That will essentially be the vaccine that you will need, and I'm going to talk about some easy tips that you can follow, to keep misinformation at bay, and find your way to navigate, to trustworthy and credible sources. We all know that the WHO, in March this year called, the pandemic actually an infodemic, which means there is just so much information, the sheer volume of information which inundates our inboxes, our phones, makes it very difficult for a common man to understand, what is truth and what is not. It sort of, if I may say, it sort of increases the distance between trustworthy information and, the end user who needs it. So between all of it, how do we help the users navigate, through the sea of misinformation that we see on all platforms, is what we aim to do. Of course, there have been reasons why this is a pertinent problem for us in India. We are the second largest internet population, with huge spike in internet user numbers over the last couple of years. And largely, this new internet users are coming from tier 2, tier 3 cities and rural India now lately. We are probably the largest user base for social media platforms like Facebook, WhatsApp, YouTube, chat apps, and add to it the biggest, media market that we are. We have about 350, satellite channels and about 17,000, publications. So there is quite a lot for our, consumers or internet users to sort of, digest. So how do they distill that information? So primarily, a lot of them are, first-time mobile users, and they lack critical thinking, skills, and they have low media literacy levels. I would say think of it like a information superhighway is what we are tackling now. I'm sure all of you do remember the first time that you learned how to drive a car or any other vehicle, and you would initially take teeny baby steps. You would first be around your house, and only then, once you've had a bit of practice, muster the courage to go to a highway. But with the information scenario currently, it's a super highway, and unfortunately, people are driving on the super highway without any formal learning, or really any GPS system. Thankfully, fact checking does come to some help, but I think there is more need to be done, because internet, while it is the world's best fact checker, it can also be a bias confirmer often at the same time. So we need to be careful about developing good information hygiene habits. So I would say we all know that rumor mongering around COVID-19. I mean, misinformation is not sort of a new problem for India. It predates COVID time, and COVID-19 sort of made it even more in the face for us. And ever since the advent of the pandemic, we saw misinformation on COVID-19 in all forms. Well, Dr. Rajnikant did go through the various waves. And that's so true. Every time with the new phase of the pandemic, we had a different line of, misinformation. Like initially it was about virus origin, then it came to causes, then of course symptoms, umpteen magical cures, how garlic or cow urine can cure, coronavirus, or how you can pop up, probably use some salt or, elaichi or long, and, that can cure it too. Again, like I mentioned, so all of these false and unverified information, what it does is creates more gap between the end user and trustworthy sources. He isn't able to fathom how does he find his way to the trustworthy source. Announcement specifically, I mean, each state has its own rules and regulation. Each city, and in the city also, each district has its own different rules and regulations. Again, in the plethora of sea of misinformation, how does one reach the trustworthy information? Conspiracy theories, vaccine announcements have been the latest favorite of, I would say, misinformation creators. There is a lot of talk about vaccine in 1 month or 3 months, but it's very important to know where do you get your facts right. Social media, of course, is prone to misinformation because its very nature allows for information to be shared very readily. But unlike traditional news outlets, one key thing that we all should, as internet users, keep in mind, that it comes without any gatekeeping, no editorial filters, no fact checking, and often a lot of bias. Consider it like almost everybody having a printing press in their hands these days, but not everybody is a reporter. So you need to be sure of whose information are you relying on, when you need a critical, information to arm yourself to take the right decision. Like until some time ago, you would rely on, either the newspapers or government agencies. Should you now be believing any random, message that comes your way? Probably not. You should question the source. And of course, what adds to the complexity is the speed at which misinformation spreads is, of course, unprecedented. From the work that we've done, we've seen the most common types of online misinformation are either text formats, which are either misattributed or completely fabricated. They would, Dr. Rajnikant, in fact, cited one example where they did give an ICMR attribution, but it didn't come from, actually ICMR. Similarly, it happens with, UNESCO as well, any important agency. But again, it's important to see whether the agency actually is saying that. We also see a lot of misinformation in the form of pictures, false context again. Either they will be photoshopped or old pictures will be used with wrong context just to, keep the flow of, the information on various platforms. Videos also a huge source of misinformation. Again, old videos being used in wrong context, and a lot many times they're manipulated as well. Dr. Karnika Seth did talk about, deep fakes. I would say India has its own version of cheap fakes. We would either slow down the video or, clip it or show only half bit of it. So there is, a huge amount of misinformation in various formats. And I'm only talking about, few in this slide. So it's easier to digest and distill for our, audience here. So what is it that we're doing wrong? We've seen primarily the reason why people fall for fake news is that, most of the users focus more on the content of the message and not on the source or evidence cited. A lot of it, would say, okay, we've got, garlic. We say, all right, I believe in, certain, form of, medicine, which is why I agree to this. Or if it has come to me from some, trusted celebrity or some celebrity, I would end up believing because I attach the celebrity's, credibility with it without thinking whether the celebrity is an authoritative source to talk about that subject. For example, if you're talking about, COVID-related stuff, is, for example, Amitabh Bachchan the right person, to talk about it? Then, but it so happens we've seen out of, our analysis of how people understand messages, they, if it has come from an important personality, or a celebrity, they would immediately, share it with others, but that can be harmful. We've seen in countries like, Iran, for example, about 700 people lost their lives because they consumed, wrong, chemical, thinking it could cure. So misinformation can take lives, and it is a health emergency that we all are facing. Also, what we've seen is they don't cross-check from other reliable or authoritative sources. In the rush to, I think, forward, there is always this intent to help, but we should be wary that, the intention to help can actually cause more harm. And take a pause, try and verify the information, see if it is coming from, credible, and what is it that the credible sources. There were some, which Dr. Rajni cited, and I would say that's your best bet in this, misinformation or the infodemic, so to say. So don't go by your beliefs and your personal biases. Go by facts coming from authoritative sources. So there is clearly not just too much of information, but too much of misinformation. So how does one begin by really, coping with it? I would say begin by, understanding your information neighborhood. When I say information neighborhood, I mean not every information that you find or access is sort of, coming from the same source. Most of it is raw and unverified information. So that's something you should be wary of. Most of the information coming from social media platforms, if you aren't sure of the source, or if it hasn't come from the original source, say, for example, it's only a WHO handle sharing it or an ICMR's own account sharing it, you probably should not be, believing it. Only information from authoritative source. Again, like I said, for COVID-related stuff, probably it's the ICMR, it's the health ministry, it's the WHO who are more authoritative sources, or you could go to, news, websites as well. Though in this entire, our work with, fact checkers also tells us that they did have, trouble sometimes verifying false misinformation, especially related to COVID, because the complexity was, of a different scale. So we saw a lot of good collaborations between journalists and health, organizations. Dr. Rajnikant also mentioned about the scientists, voluntary group which came forward and, helped them. In fact, even ICMR's own Mythbusters come handy to collectively, I think, take to each one of our audiences the truth, what is right and what they should believe. So in the current health emergency, I would say all of our viewers say they should rely on all of these sources like the ICMR, in their own website, the Ministry of Health, your own state health ministries and local health departments. There are different type of information needs that you have, which each of them cater to. So know, which one do you have to go to if you need, say, for example, information to do with, tests. ICMR, of course, have been giving a lot more, in their website is itself, a huge treasure trove of information. So rely on the information coming directly from ICMR, and its sources and websites and handles. WHO as well. News media, of course, has, been doing a lot of work. They do have, FAQs, Mythbusters, along with having dedicated fact-checking, websites, which also a lot of you should know. Like the ICMR itself, Dr. Rajnikant mentioned, has a dedicated website, and a page which deals with Mythbusters. So does WHO. So if you come across, any piece of information that you're not sure of, you should probably check, there. And I will, in a bit, talk about some easy steps which will make it, which will tell you in a demo format, how you should go about doing it. Of course, the Indian Scientists, Response to COVID is a voluntary organization of about, I think, 500 scientists who come forward, and I think that's a huge help to the journalist community because, so health expertise and especially health fact checking needs, scientists and, health fraternity and journalists to come together to, fact check all of this information so it can be taken to the, end audience together. I strongly believe collaboration is very key here, and we join hands and, which has happened, of course, but there is a long road to go. We also have the PIB fact check doing a lot of, fact checks for all of you. Then there are websites like Boom Live, Vishwas News, Health Analytics India, Asia, Alt News. There's also a search engine specifically for fact checks, which is the Google Fact Check, Explorer. That search engine only gives you, fact check stories by all of these, fact checkers from India and across the world. Also, there are some chatbots by the IFCN, which is the International, Fact Checking Network. So go to these sources, and a lot of them have made it very easy. All you need to do is upload, just key in some words or upload a picture, and it will give you, an answer. So primarily, this is how you should, approach. You should check the source. Is what you're accessing a forwarded message, or has it come to you from an original source? Well, if it's an original source, you can be sure of it. But if it's not, then be wary and try and verify it from other credible sources, news media, or fact checkers. You should be sure whether the sender, not just a prominent celebrity, say if someone has sent, a lot many times journalists have had journalists have fallen for a fake. In fact, I'll be citing one example, very shortly, where a lot of journalists, first tweeted about, a doctor losing her life because of COVID, but then eventually, they realized it was not true. So the credible, authority, like for COVID related stuff, it has to be WHO, ICMR, the health ministry. You should not share information if it is verified. Take a pause. Try and understand your intent to help can also be harmful, especially in a pandemic situation. So, hold there and take a moment. In fact, try and reply back if you understand that a message someone has shared with you in a group is false. Or from whatever you've learned, I would say ask them, question, are they sure that this message has come from, a falsely misattributed, message, which is a huge form of misinformation. A text which doesn't have any attribution can still seem a bit of, doubtful or suspicious to most common users. But a lot many times when just a name is added to it, says it has, the UNESCO has said this, or, the ICMR has said this, a lot many times it's false impersonation or misattribution. So be very wary of, that as well. Just like these two, messages, the one on the right is exactly the one that Dr. Rajnikant has shared, which said, these are the list of things, 21 things which ICMR had said, but ICMR had actually not said any of, these or most of, it. So how do you actually, verify for yourself? And the one on the left said, there's no death from COVID-19 in Israel, and this is what they're doing. And probably if we follow this, we will be safe too. So what is it that you do? The first thing that you do is you come out of whatever platform you're reading that, on, and just don't keep, scrolling, because you will probably not get an answer there. specifically with chat apps, they end up becoming the black holes of, misinformation. So come out, of whatever platform you are and do a simple web search or check it on authentic, official websites and information. So the first thing when it's attributing, ICMR, if you haven't got it from ICMR's own, either chat app or their own website, you should go to their website and check, or to make it easy for you, just go to the web and search, about it. And I'll tell you what I, did. The good thing with searching is that most news that needs validation has already been verified and validated by those organizations and probably newsrooms and fact checkers. Just like Dr. Rajnikant mentioned, the moment someone would have reported to ICMR that such piece of information is doing the rounds, they issued a clarification saying this is not true, which was picked up by either fact checkers or newsrooms who would have fact checked it for you already. So all you need to do is describe what the message says in easy 3 to 4 words. A lot of people I've seen write full sentences. Sometimes that doesn't help. So if I go back to the message, the very first point in that says ICMR New Delhi, some very important points: postpone travel abroad for 2 years. So did ICMR say anything about abroad travel? So if you see, all I did was go to a web search, say ICMR abroad travel, and the results that you will see on your screen will point to it being misinformation. So what we see on the screens are then results from different news organizations or fact checkers telling you that it is a fake message attributed to ICMR's list, and it's not true. Probably if you want to be an active part of the information ecosystem, you should take one of these and send back to the groups that you've got it from, or if you've seen someone really sharing it. Similarly, the other about Israel cases, which said Israel hasn't had any COVID deaths, and it did talk about a message or a cure which could be used. All I searched was Israel COVID cases, and if you see the results, in the very first page itself is showing me about 80,000 cases and more about it as well. So do a bit of source checking, or a search. A quick search is sometimes all you need and doesn't take more than 10 seconds, believe me. All it takes is sometimes 10 seconds, because there are a lot of journalists, there are organizations like ICMR, there are organizations, different fact checkers who are at it day in and night, tackling this infodemic in their own capacities. I would next like to also talk about a bit about photo verification, because a lot of times you do get photos along which somehow seem to be connected to the text, which is why you intend to fall for it, saying, oh my god, it looks like this because the photo is saying so and so thing. And all of these tips are true for COVID and beyond as well. So first try and text search just the way I told you. Just describe whatever you are seeing in a simple search, and then see what the results are. If not, there's a very cool tool which is a Google reverse image search. So this is just like a Google text search or a web text search, wherein you would key in a text and then see what the results are. If it's a picture, it's easy to just take that picture, just save it or snip it, wherever you're accessing it, and upload it on something like this. A lot of you would, know what, Google is, but if you go to images, on Google, you'll see something like this on the screen, which has a camera icon. So all you need to do is upload the picture on this camera icon, and it'll take you to where all this picture has been published on the web. So like you see this post on, this is a recent post which was shared widely. A lot of celebrities also, fell for it. It almost seemed to suggest that this was a doctor who's written this post after realizing that, she was found COVID positive. But it turned out to be false. I mean, this was in fact a picture, a stock image probably being used since 2017. So when you do this form of, search, you will see, either fact check articles about it. It can also lead you, if you keep looking through, it can also lead you to articles from, say, 2017. So, it's very easy for you to see that if this picture existed in 2017, probably, that's how fact checkers do it. But like I would say, some basic search itself would help you, because you will see fact checks itself on top of the search results to, help you. So that's, one trick as well that you can apply for photos. Or alternatively, you could just say Dr. Aisha, and whatever the message, said, just describe the message in an easy phrase. Now, quickly talking about video verification, and I know we're sort of running over time, so I'll not go too much into detail on this, but again, the basic concept remains same. First, try a web search. Just, whatever medium you've received that, on, just try, vaguely just describing whatever the video is about or is claiming to be, and see if, it has already been fact checked. You could then attempt a Google reverse image search, which is take a screenshot of the video and then run a, reverse image, search. Just any prominent, grab. I know a lot of videos these days said, this is so and so hospital, where you can see a lot of, patients out there, but many of times those videos are old videos. We recently saw one, from some state where it was saying, see, COVID patients lying in hospitals with, water inundation. But again, that was probably a 2016 image, or a video. There's another tool which can help, which is called Invid, which is almost the equivalent of a Google reverse image search, where you just need to upload the video URL and it gives you screenshots on itself, and then you can reverse image search any screenshot. So it makes it, you don't need to take a screenshot, but essentially the concept remains, same. Another thing that can help is, you can watch out for visual clues in a video. Many times, when videos are, or old videos are, used in a different context, these are the signals which you can catch. Many times you will see number plates on the vehicles in the pictures will be wrong, or the billboards of shops in the background will be, wrong. So those are the things that you can, if you want to do like a DIY fact check. But I would say many times fact checkers have, done this, for you. But for those of you keen, you can please do pay attention to, a lot of these stuff. You will either through a search find an old video, which will give you the old context of why it was uploaded, or these things will, raise a red, sort of alert, for you, and, you will end up knowing what is the truth behind a video that you're accessing. Well, yeah, with this, again, I would say, recapping what you need to do, be very sure of the source that you're getting it from. If it's a forward, you need to check it, from a credible authority, an original source, and do not share, any information if you're not sure of it. Your intention to help can actually harm. With that, I would like to, thank you all for, listening to this. And I know it's a long road ahead. Probably collaboration is the key to tackle this big problem. We all have our own roles to do. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Ms. Malik. I think, like you call it a vaccine, it is indeed for everybody to do and everybody to learn. If I take it, I take your first slide where you said fact checking, and I would add verification are the antibiotics, and then media literacy is the vaccine. I think that do sum up some of the points, the very important points that you've raised in your very insightful presentation. Thank you very much again.
Thank you, Dr.
Again, we are going to cross over to Rama for some questions from the audience. Just a couple of questions. Let me just say here that we will take a couple of questions for you, Ms. Malik, and then we will maybe reserve a few more minutes to take up any extra question from the audience. So just maybe a further 2 minutes or so, 3 minutes for additional questions from the audience. But the first session or the first session of Q&A will be for you, Ms. Malik. So over to Rama.
Thank you, Hezekiah. So the first question we have is about creating awareness about fake news among, common citizens. Shashank is asking if what are the challenges you think in terms of taking a common citizen to fact-checking website, because people are not aware about it. So do you think that common citizen in India will ever visit a fact-checking website? What are the major challenges that you have come across?
Well, yeah, I would say it's a very good, question. This is exactly what we, were encountering when we began, some of our programs a couple, years ago, because some of the fact-checking organizations, I mean, one, they were very few in number, and also, didn't have very big reach, which is why I think the collaboration has been very key to it. All of them coming together, and like I said, for a common man, probably it's not to go to, one, there is, we collectively share information about these fact-checking websites now available. In fact, I'm very happy to share that in India now has the maximum number of fact-checking, websites anywhere, in the world from, and that's a huge change, over the last, 2 years. When we began, there were only about, I think, 3 and only in English. Now there are very many fact-checking organizations also operating in local languages. And I think the collaboration with I know in some states, local, governments have collaborated with those fact checkers, especially for COVID, and are amplifying the work that they do. And I have seen a huge, sense of, I have seen a huge sense of, fact checkers coming up and saying, all right, we don't mind, anybody who wants to take our, fact checks and, showcase. We just want to ensure people get the right information and do not fall for, all of the weird cures that are, circulating. So collaboration, I think, is key to amplifying the work of, fact checkers. I know original, media bodies, collaboration between, journalists, health fact checkers, multilaterals, government, organizations, local administration is the key to take it to common masses for sure.
Thank you, Ms. Malik. The second question is about technology. How can we use technology to battle misinformation? So Mayura Deshpande is asking, as Dr. Seth also spoke about artificial intelligence, what is the future of artificial intelligence, in tackling fake news, especially on social media?
I think that's a very interesting question, and which comes to a lot of ours, a lot of us as well. We often question, technology can do everything. Why can't it, tackle this, problem? If something has been identified as fake, why doesn't it, just disappear? Now, Dr. Karnika did dwell into a bit of, the complexity around, how child pornography is different from, the misinformation concept, because for child pornography, it's probably easy to identify, and there are some words that organizations can use and find. But when it comes to misinformation, and especially in India, there is just so much of it and comes in so many forms that probably technology alone wouldn't have been able to make much of a difference. But I think they're working with fact checkers, with journalists, with formal with organizations like the ICMR and the ministry, the PIB fact check, which has been launched. So I would say technology can help amplify the fact checks. And I think I began by saying, in my presentation, that none of us alone, I believe, is capable of handling. So if we expect that there will, very soon be a bot, where we'll just key in a everything and they will be able to solve. We've come to certain, area, but the bot also, the machine technology also needs to be trained by, these fact checks and, this information that fact checkers are doing, which is why a lot of good, work is happening. Fact checkers are working actively with, tech platforms, with government in surfacing the fact checks. Until some time ago, if you searched for, something which is going viral, you wouldn't probably see, fact check stuff, but now it does appear in the search with the fact check claim. There's like a small tag along which says fact checked by, so and so has claimed it, so and fact checked it. You would see that on Facebook as well. So this is essentially the work of journalists, slogging themselves, sitting through, long days, sifting through their social media feeds, fact checking a story, and then, tech platforms using it. But they've been, able to then take it to a lot of, audience. So every time now, if you search something on Facebook, and if that has been flagged by, say a third party, fact checker or some of the fact checkers, it would alert you to it. Similarly, this happens when you do a, search on Google. It would also happen when you do a search on, YouTube. So I believe, coming together of different stakeholders, government, technology, journalists, fact checkers, and organizations like ours, which help, bring them together, have sort of made a significant dent in the ecosystem, and that's probably the way forward.
So much, Ms. Malik. So we will pause here for a couple of minutes to take the fourth and the final opinion poll. Rita, can we please reflect the question on screen?
Yeah, we are just posting the opinion poll question. So now the opinion poll question 4 is reflecting on, final opinion poll question is reflecting on everyone's screen. Thank you very much. We are ending the poll. Now you can see the result on your screen. %7% says yes, and 33%. Just a minute. Yeah, and a 33% says no. Thank you. Thank you for voting.
All right, thank you so much, Rita. We'll take a couple of more questions. So there's Avik Roy. He's asking how government, actually there are multiple questions regarding this particular subject. So Avik is asking how the government is addressing the problem of misinformation in rural areas, where the source of misinformation is not primarily social media or social media channels or WhatsApp for that matter. It's mostly based on hearsay. So how government is tackling the problem of misinformation, especially during the time of COVID in those areas? Anybody who would like to answer this question?
Well, I think I have a few points that I know of that. For example, radio is one media where it's accessible even in rural areas. And a lot of times, it's been instrumental in conveying the right news to them and telling them what is correct and what is not. I know the social media platforms may not be so rampantly used in rural areas. However, there is a great escalation of access to technology, and even I would say mobile phones in rural areas now. And the statistics also point out, more than 50% or more, population already is using internet and also mobile phones today. In rural areas also, the ICT index of India is way on the higher side. So we may assume that it's not reached them, but a lot of rural areas already have access to technology, and small NGOs and companies are also spreading awareness. Not for profits, the panchayat system, that is also very actively involved in fighting COVID and other kind of fake news associated with it. So recently have been part of many webinars where the rural areas and people from the rural areas touched on this issue, not exactly fake news, but COVID as a pandemic. And in that particular discourse, I understood that the level of communication they already have and the information they are able to get to some extent through broadcast and through stakeholders actively participating in elevating these issues.
Rama, actually we are running short of time, so we will take another 2 or 3 questions only.
Sure, Rita. So the second question is by Robinson Rodriguez. He's asking that, as Dr. Seth in her presentation also pointed out, that the issue of misinformation actually intentionally circulated. How do we face it? Surbhi, if you would like to answer this question.
So, well, yeah, we've seen, like I mentioned, sort of the problem of misinformation is not something that we've seen only around, COVID time, but it sort of predates COVID. And we've seen waves of it in different, times. Even in 2016-17, there were issues about, fake rumors on child kidnapping actually leading to, some mob lynchings and people losing lives because of that. Then in the run-up to the elections, of course, we saw a lot of misinformation being shared, which was sort of politically charged, and then now in COVID we are seeing, I mean, at least for good 3-4 months there was only COVID related misinformation. So yes, I think we have, I mean, there's no dearth of topic. Misinformation does touch every aspect, and then it is dealt with in the same manner, I believe, by all news organizations, all fact checkers, and they do reach out to different parties to verify the information and then post a relevant fact check, which can then be accessed by their audience, or people at large to find out So again, if you're accessing any form of misinformation, I would say it's the same, thing. If it's not coming to you from that particular party, you should probably, check that, again, and check with authoritative sources, the news media and fact checkers on what the truth behind it is.
Thank you so much, Ms. Malik. And the last question is for Dr. Rajni. In a nutshell, Dipanshu is asking, what do we do when we get this type of misinformation on, say, WhatsApp or any other private channel on COVID? If we get such misinformation, what is the way forward? What do we do?
Best way to prevent, and if you want to get the real information, if you get any misinformation on WhatsApp, it is always better to track the original source, authentic information. If any information related to COVID-19 is coming through WhatsApp, it may be misinformation. So whether you should contact the ICMR, you can go to the website of the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. If you are in a particular state, you can check the state health website. There is Public Health Administration is also there, CMO is there, DHO is there, Commissioner is there, DM is there. So they all are having the correct information. Whatever we are dealing with the state governments also. ICMR is writing letters to the Chief Secretary to the state government also. So whatever information is being spread from the ICMR or from the government, from the Ministry of Health, this all information is being disseminated to the state level also, so that even the district level also. So all information is reaching at the district level, at the village level, it should be correct. So whenever there is any misinformation, it is always advisable to check the real authentic source, and they can contact the ICMR anytime. They can contact me also. They can write to the ministry also. They can check the ministry website also. For example, vaccine related issues. There are many problems out there. People are saying that vaccine is coming on 15th of August. So many media people, many journal people, they are asking, and they are sending inquiries whether it is a fact or false information. So we are clarifying it that 15th August was meant only to fast track the vaccine related research. Vaccine may not be available on 15 August. It takes certain times. We have to follow the ethics. We have to follow the science, and science takes time. Unless and until it is not safe, it is not effective, you cannot expect the vaccine to come. So it will take certain time. You just wait and watch, and we will let you know whenever vaccine will be available by the end of this year or by the early next year. So these kind of information, they are appearing, and it is advisable always that the person who is getting the information, they can recheck it with the concerned department and concerned person.
In fact, I'd like to add here, I had one case where this, report abuse was done on that platform because that news was completely fake. And once reported, photo DNA hash mechanism was used to check the duplication of the content on that platform and stop it from spreading. So that's also a good way of, curbing fake news. And we have successfully used that in a couple of cases.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rajni, Dr. Seth, and Ms. Malik. Over to you, Hezekiah.
Thank you, Rama. I also want to thank our esteemed panelists, Dr. Rajni, Dr. Seth, and Ms. Malik. Thank you very much for those very insightful and captivating presentations. I have also seen a few comments, although there are too many to read. I think they are all positive. They are all well received by our audience out there. I just want to really sum it up by saying you have educated us on the rise of fake news, the behaviors that perpetuate its spread, its impact on society and on humans, and the legal implications, especially the responsibility that we are called on to exercise in order to counter the spread of fake news. I think that's very important because that responsibility is an individual responsibility in the most cases. It's all of us are called to that same standard of responsibility and ethical practice. And then also, Ms. Malik, you gave us from the professional journalistic point of view, but also again from the individual point of view, that we can practice fact-checking, we can empower ourselves with media and information literacy. I must say, from the UNESCO point of view, we also advocate the same. As a matter of fact, UNESCO published a handbook media educators on the very topic of misinformation, disinformation, and fake news, with the objective of achieving exactly that we empower the individual so that they behave better online. I know that we're running out of time, so before we get cut off, I want to say my goodbyes and I want to say my thank you to everybody who followed us today, but not forgetting our partners, Terry, for organizing this session with us at UNESCO. And I'm advised that more are coming, more sessions of this type are coming your way, so watch this space. But good day and goodbye for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everyone.
All the panelists, our moderator, Mr. Nalamni Hazelke, Dr. Rajnikant, Dr. Kanika Seth, Ms. Survi, Ashita, and Rama to be part of this webinar. And of course, I'm sure that this webinar will generate the awareness among civil society and especially to research community. And they will be able to know how to check the fake news and they will be able to say from themselves from such kind of news. I think my colleague Shantanu or PK is with us. If they can, they would like to contribute a few points on this. Dr. Ganguly or Dr. PK, are you there?
Yes, I am here, but am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are very much audible. If you want to contribute few lines on this.
No, this is a definitely an absorbing seminar, and we really learned a lot. And what Hezekiel was also mentioning, that the idea of this series of webinars we had, that there are lots of misinformation is running around, and people are actually be fooled using those informations, and several such legal issues are coming up using those information. So what was our objective in this particular thing is that let's build awareness and develop some some understanding within the researchers as well as within the other sphere of people, that how and what information one should take and what they should not take. We all know that government sites, as Dr. Rajnikant was also mentioning, is always the first choice. But when such provisions or such facilities are not available, or rather, if we are carried away by the WhatsApp message, as Dr. Shet was also saying, so those are the thing, those are the time we should be more careful forwarding those news or those fake news, because truly our laws are getting tough to tougher. So it's always better that we be aware before actually spreading fake news or misinformation, so that such kind of things are diminishing day by day. So with this, I think our esteemed speakers has covered a lot, and our all participants have already received a lot. So from my side today, hats off to everybody.
Thank you, PK, Dr. PK sir. And we will soon share the feedback link and e-certificate to all the attendees. Plus, I would like to also announce that video recording of this webinar is available on Terry YouTube channel. So with this, thank you all the speakers and all the attendees. This is not the end. We will soon come up with new topic on this fake news.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Hopefully sometimes we can meet physically also.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
You. Thank you.
Sure, we should meet physically. Okay. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.